Let's take a look at this 13-year-old finance site for CFA and other exams, making $198,000 per year in profit and recently listed for sale at an asking price of $743,000 or a 3.75x multiple. In this video here, I'm going to go through and unpack the details of this business listing and share some of my own experience-based insight into this business model, what really stands out, the growth levers you could pull to grow this business if you acquire it, and ultimately my quick take on the valuation of this business. On that note, if you're out there and you're interested in acquiring an established and profitable online business, I suggest signing up for my deal newsletter, which is acumenwire.com, where I send out online businesses that were recently listed for sale, along with my quick take on the business and a focus on established, profitable, and time-tested businesses. I will put a link below to acumenwire.com so you can head on over there and get signed up. Now, let's take a look here at this listing. This one was just listed for sale yesterday. It popped up. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through the listing and pick out some of the key details. I'm not going to read it word for word, and then we will circle back to the details and talk about them. So it's doing revenue of $225,000 a year, income $198,000 a year. What is that? It's pretty high. It's like 85% margin, but that is typical with digital product, digital service, or content businesses. It describes it as a content business that offers articles, study tools, courses, and guides to help professionals pass their finance exams. Content covers over 7 exams, including the CFA, FRM, CPA. The website attracts 3.4 million page views a year and generates all revenue from direct ad sales to exam preparation providers. That's a very key sentence. Like, there's a lot of meat in that one sentence right there. So we're certainly going to come back to that. Revenue has trended slightly downward. That's another key point, and they justify it a bit. We'll come back to that, I think. Perfect opportunity for any entrepreneur, especially one with a finance background or direct sales experience. The business comes with many assets. This is a trust brand with a long history of rich, authoritative, evergreen content. The new owner has several avenues for growth, including exploring affiliate marketing to expand clientele to smaller providers, expanding into adjacent finance exams, especially around accounting, can draw in more traffic and additional ad revenue. The sellers have a proven content creation roadmap when launching new verticals, launching a podcast that leverages existing content. Clients and exam bodies are usually eager to collaborate and send guests for this type of program, so a new owner will have plenty to work with. Same holds true for YouTube. A larger initiative would be a job board, which would help diversify income while leveraging in already existing audience. The sellers are ready to hand off the business to someone who can realize its full potential and expand into more exams. This business listing really packs in the growth levers, I feel like. You know, most business listings pack in some growth levers, but this one I think is really packaging in a lot. And, well, they seem to have different varying levels of viability. So we're going to talk about those. Let me just kind of go back to what I thought was that real key sentence right here. I think we all understand what the business does, and we'll talk about that more in the context of this key sentence. It attracts 3.4 million page views a year and generates all revenue from direct ad sales to exam preparation providers. So this is basically a content website. It gets traffic, and then they sell ad space to the exam prep providers. Now, when I see this 3.4 million page views number here, this number one tells me that pretty much all the traffic is coming from Google, because page views is just a really highly associated term with Google Organic. And it is also telling me in context of the revenue that the monetization is poor. At least that's my opinion of it. I just see 3.4 million page views right here and only $225,000 in revenue. That, to me, reads very, very low. Like, what would the number be if we were doing display advertising? This is kind of, I think, interesting to consider. I usually don't pull this out because I'm usually not looking into display advertising or content businesses. They're not my favorite, but this one here is pretty interesting. Anyways, if we go to type in 3,400,000 page views, that's 340. No, we divide that by 1,000. That's going to be I'm going for the CPM here. All right, so 3,400, and then we multiply that by, let's just say, $15. Okay, well, I guess that's only 51,000. My take on it, unless I'm doing the math wrong there. After checking my math there, if it were monetized through display ads at a $15 CPM rate, it would only be making 51,000. So maybe the revenue is not as low, or this business is not as under monetized as I thought it was. Anyhow, all of the revenue is coming from direct ad sales to the exam prep providers. So that gives us some context, or provides all the context we need to know about what is not being monetized and what we could monetize. So I think on that note, let's shift into the growth opportunities here. All right, and one really jumps out at me, and that is a job board. Right, so you could add a job board on there and have jobs posted for candidates or people that complete the certifications. I guess there may be a little bit of difference in the audience alignment if you got people looking to pass the exams versus you're trying to get candidates that are interested in applying to jobs that require passing the exams already. You may have a difference in alignment there with that, but I have seen some job boards be very, very lucrative. So I think that is a fair opportunity. The listing also mentions YouTube and podcasts. I'm going to talk about those together because they're basically filling the same void, and that is that the business needs to diversify its channels of traffic. I mean, we can't even call it customers, and we can't even call them users. They're probably really, maybe they're users, but they're certainly at least visitors, and the traffic leads to visitors. If this business, as I'm assuming, is all dependent on Google, that is very, very, very risky. And let's be real, nobody really just wants to read content on a website anymore. That's not engaging, and that type of content is dying hard and dying fast. So to really grow this business, and I think just to maintain it, you have to be prepared to produce other forms of content here, and that's going to be the podcast and the YouTube. On top of that, the next thing that I see as a growth lever that is not listed here is advertising. And we're going to have to provide a little bit more context to this here, so stay with me. But the business as it is now is just relying on organic traffic. They haven't mentioned anything about ads. I'm not seeing any room in the expenses that I'm calculating that they would be in what I'm calculating to imply that they are spending on ads. So I'm assuming this is all coming from organic traffic. But as they're doing it now here, you're not selling a product aside from the ad space, right? The users and visitors to the website don't input their credit card number, it seems. So unless that happens and you are facilitating the transaction, it's very difficult to run ads. So to make that happen, you really have to have some type of product. So another growth lever here, and they kind of mention it, or maybe they don't mention it, but they talk about it, is articles, study tools, courses, and guides. Possibly some of these study tools, courses, and guides could be repackaged into a digital product that could be sold and sold profitably with ads. Get what I'm saying there? Just running ads to a business that's selling advertising space typically is not easy. It can be done. It's called ad arbitrage. There are people that do it and do it at a very high level and operate on razor thin margins and spend, $2 million to make $2,200,000 in revenue. It's a tight game. It requires being a very top tier advertiser. Anyhow, more practically speaking, for this business would be to create your own digital product or service. All right, ultimately charging for the content that you have. And then finally, there's affiliate marketing, promoting other people's offers and collecting a commission on that. This listing does mention some of that, or does mention that to a small degree as one of the growth levers. I think that is pretty reasonable, but you also, at least not without researching it, I personally don't know off the top of my head what affiliate programs are out there. Possibly, it would be worth exploring with your direct advertisers to say, hey, what products do you want to sell and what can you pay a high commission for? And allow us to either white label and resell that product and give you a high royalty, or white label and resell it and the transaction happens through you and you pay us a high commission, or we just promote the product directly and you pay us a commission. And you can drive your organic traffic to that, but also your paid traffic to that as well. That would work. That would be, it's actually a pretty fair way, I think, to get high quality digital products and sell them without, how should I say it, cannibalizing your organic content that you already have, or the free content that you already offer. Right? Because if you start paywalling it, you're also going to start cutting off some of your organic traffic and your visitor base as well. But if you take some of the other content and either white label it or sell it directly for them, you achieve facilitating and transacting the order and earning enough revenue such that you can run ads for it. So I think there's a lot of growth levers here, but keep in mind, while they may seem easy, in practice it's never going to be easy. Otherwise, the seller of this business would have pulled them off themselves. And maybe, here's the big maybe, and this is one of the reasons why it is difficult being a buyer, or expressed otherwise, shows why you were at a dissymmetry, at an disinformation asymmetry. You're suffering from disinformation asymmetry, right? Like you don't have all the information as the seller in this case, because the seller may have tried these channels and they may not have worked, but they're not going to necessarily tell you that, and they don't have to disclose that either, right? If they don't disclose that, they're not, they're not misrepresenting anything to you. It's just something that you will never know, and you may never know why it's going to work. So anyways, pulling all these off represents a substantial change in the business model from just selling ad space to the traffic that you get. And I think that the business as it is here is kind of in a, I don't want to say a declining state. We'll talk about the revenue in a second, but it is in a diminishing state. Or maybe, how should I say this? Not on an upward, not projecting itself in a growth manner. Because organic content to advertising space, both of those are kind of declining, right? There's a smaller and smaller pool of people that want to pay for direct advertising space because a lot of advertisers want to run on an affiliate basis. And a lot of advertisers simply just don't have the budget to pay outright for direct advertising space, but they would if they knew they were going to get a return on it. And on the flip side, organic Google traffic is declining. It's harder and harder to get. So this business model, just as it is, doesn't have a positive outlook going forward. All right, it's going to require a substantial shift. Setting up the affiliate offer, setting up your digital products, all of these things are going to take some figuring out. It's not like you just jump into this and keep doing more of what has already been working. Whoever buys this business is most likely going to have a fair bit of figuring out. Now, let's talk about the valuation and the decline in revenue. And where does it say that? Right here. Revenue has trended slightly downward as the sellers have focused on other priorities and have not focused as much on growth and sales outreach. This, second part of the sentence here, the reason why is ultimately irrelevant, right? Maybe the sellers have actually done that, but they're just saying this. Maybe they put a lot of effort in, but it hasn't gotten anywhere. So in the teaser, they just say this. Maybe they're being completely honest. As a buyer, I would discredit this sentence entirely here and just focus on what we know. The revenue has trended slightly downward, and ultimately here's the business as it exists. So right now they're basing it on probably the trailing 12 months of income and assigning a 3.75 valuation multiple. My approach to valuing businesses, as I've explained in other videos, is I like to assign a valuation to the business model, a multiplier valuation to the business model as it currently is, and then multiply that out by the future income. So let's take a look at that. And I know in this case that this valuation multiple here is going to be really distorted. So my thought on this business model, which is fundamentally it is a content business that relies on organic Google traffic and is selling advertising space, that a business like this should trade for somewhere in the 2 to 3.5x multiple range. This one I think would maybe go to the mid or higher side of that because they do have direct advertiser contracts. There's some value there. It's 13 years old, so it has stood the test of time. I'm going to assume that the content is moderately high quality, otherwise it wouldn't have lasted 13 years and they wouldn't have any direct advertisers. But that said, in the realm of a content business, it has no affiliate offers. It does not have multiple streams of visitor acquisition here, unless they're not telling us something, but I feel like this broker would tell us if they did have multiple streams of visitor acquisition. And the fact that they're talking about launching a podcast in YouTube implies that they don't have those, and those are the two other primary sources of visitor acquisition. So I'm assuming it's all coming from Google here. At the very high end of that would be they have multiple affiliate offers, they have direct advertisers running, and then they also have multiple channels of visitor acquisition. I'd say that would put them, up near a 3.5, maybe even a little higher, maybe a 3.75, but they don't have that. I think that this business really would be, in my opinion, just kind of in the middle of the range, maybe say 3, a little bit higher because it is age. They do have the direct advertisers, maybe 3.2. I don't see it going for much higher than that, right? There's a lot of opportunity here, but these are all things that if the seller wants to get that value from the business, they should implement themselves. And the reason in most cases why they don't is because it's not that easy. It's easy to just rattle off a list and talk about it, but it is very difficult to implement growth changes or strategy changes. So on that note, like I said, it would go for 3. I think this business would be worth a 3 to 3.2x valuation multiple, but then we have the downward trend. Now, we don't know exactly how much it's down, but this is something that you would want to flesh out and analyze once you actually sign the NDA and get the information on this business. And then you want to project out, okay, on this trend with me as the owner, what is this business likely to do over the next 12 months? And multiply that number by the valuation multiple. So in this case, let's just be hypothetical and say that it's declining 20%. Well, in the next year, after you buy it, you're not going to get this $198,000. Right? You are going to get 20% less than that in profit. So do 198 times 0.8. And the business, assuming it's declining at 20%, when you take it over, it will be projected to produce $158,000 in profit over the next year. Now let's assign the multiple to that. Let's just say, we're optimistic here. We're going to go with a 3.2. I think a reasonable valuation for this business would be $506,000, which is significantly less than the asking price here. That's my take on it based on the available information. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm overlooking something, right? We don't know the rate of decline in the revenue. Let's just say maybe the revenue only declines 10%. So 198 times 0.9, right? And then multiply that by the 3.25. You get a $579,000 valuation. maybe you get into it and you look at it and you're like, okay, there's a lot more here to like, right? Maybe this business gets a lot of branded search volume. In that case, we're going to raise the valuation multiple that we assigned in the future 12 months and say it's worth 3.5 or 3.75 and the valuation goes up. But ultimately, based on what I can tell from the teaser here, it is valued quite lofty. I really don't expect that I would get into it and find anything that would substantiate this, but maybe, I get into it and it looks a little better than I'm assuming based on the details, and it's valued more fairly, or a more fair valuation would be close to that $743,000. If I were interested in this business, I would certainly not rule this out on the valuation, but I would get the information and kind of dig in and reconsider my valuation analysis. It's not, in my opinion, it's not completely just, out of the ballpark here at $743,000, but I think it is a little high. On that note, what is your take on this valuation of $743,000 for the 13-year-old finance site for CFA and other exams, making $198,000? Let me know in the comments below. And also, if you feel like there's anything I missed out on or overlooked, also let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. If you found this video helpful and insightful, you know the drill. Smash that like button to help me out in the YouTube algorithm. I am calling it a wrap and signing off on that note.